to the Indiana Arts Commission quarterly business meeting. Today is
Alberta,
Friday.
can we hold just a second while we get going on YouTube so the public can have access to the meeting?
Okay, thank you.
Connie will let you know when we're ready.
Yeah,
Okay.
and actually, Alberta, you're good to go. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, I will go ahead and get started then. Thank you, Connie. And thank you, Bridget, for that. Good morning and welcome to the Indiana Arts Commission quarterly business meeting. Today is Friday, September the 10th, and we are meeting by Zoom only. I am Alberta Barker, and I am chair for the Indiana Arts Commission and commissioner for Lafayette. And if we could start with the commissioners, and I was going to say, Stephanie, do you want to do roll call so people don't talk over one another?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Thank you, Alberta.
Thank you.
Lisa Abbott,
Yes, I am from Region 7 out of Fishers.
thank you. And Alberta Barker,
Alberta Barker, Commissioner, Lafayette.
Chad Bolser,
Chad Bolser, Commissioner, Richmond.
Ruth Ann Cowling,
Hi, Ruth Ann. I'm from Jeffersonville, Region 12.
Dave Heist,
Good morning. I'm Dave Heist, Commissioner from Culver and Wabash.
thank you. Greg Hall,
Good morning. I'm Greg Hall. I'm Commissioner from Region 7, Indianapolis.
Lori McRobbie,
Morning, I'm Lori McRobbie, Commissioner from District 8 in Bloomington.
Jake Oakman,
Morning, Jake Oakman, Commissioner, Indianapolis.
Kelsey Pieper,
Good morning, Kelsey Pieper, Commissioner, Indianapolis.
Alan Platt,
Alan Platt, Commissioner for Fresno.
let's see, Ann Valentine.
Your audio, Ann, is not coming through, but.
Oh, we see you.
And then we have two regional arts partner representatives, Anne Monaco.
Yes, Ann Fields Monaco, Region 4 up in Lafayette, and we are the RAP co-chair with the other Ann.
And then Ann McKim.
Hi, Ann McKim. I'm in Region 10 down in Evansville, Indiana, and regional co-chair with Ann without an E.
And then IAC staff, Connie,
Brom, IAC staff.
Bridget,
Eckert, IAC staff.
Stephanie,
Hi, Stephanie Haynes, IAC staff.
Maya,
Good morning, Maya Michelson, IAC staff.
Lewis,
Louis Rickey, Executive Director.
Deanna,
Deanna Polsma, IAC staff.
Chapin,
Schnick, IAC staff.
Paige,
Paige Sharp, IAC staff.
and then Ben.
Benjamin Thomas, IAC intern.
And if I've missed anyone, just go ahead and let us know you're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. We are missing our dear Commissioner, Libby Chu, this morning. I think, as most of you know, her husband recently passed away, Peter Murray, and today is a memorial service for him, I think at 6:30 this evening. So I would just like to begin the meeting with a moment of silence in memory of Peter Murray. Thank you for that. The first item on the agenda today is the approval of the agenda. And also, we had minutes from our June 25th and our July 30 meetings that were held. The minutes and the agenda were emailed out. So if you have had an opportunity to review those, does anyone have any changes that they see? And if not, I'll take a motion to approve.
To approve the minutes as presented.
This is Jake.
Dave Heist.
Thank you. Stephanie, would you do a roll call, please?
Thank you. Lisa,
Aye.
Alberta,
Aye.
Chad,
Aye.
Ruth Ann,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Kelsey,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. So we'll begin with the executive committee and executive director reports, beginning with the agency financials. Maya or Lewis?
Yeah, thanks, Alberta. I'll jump in. You're looking at August, which is 2 months into our fiscal year. As you can see, if you look at the expenses, we are largely on target. A couple of things I'll point out to you just as an FYI. Point one, you'll see we're slightly over thank you, Chapin, always on top of it. We're slightly over what's budgeted there for personnel. That is due to some slight adjustments state personnel has made, and they will be actually reimbursing us for that additional expenditure that has appeared on this line. So eventually we'll write that. We'll be able to write that and get back into alignment there. And then I would also point out that in point 7, we're pretty close to on target. That just depends on when contracts hits and so forth. We are in point 3. You'll see a little ahead of the game there. Just depends on when we're able to get contracts executed. Sometimes I don't time it out quite right in projections, and that's why we're a little ahead of the game there. I will point out in point 3, because the fact that Anna Trageser has left us, we are going to be have to pick up, or are in the process of picking up, some additional consultancy expenses to help cover some of her work, especially in the Onramp local. So that number will probably, or could very well be, higher than what's budgeted in that line. Ostensibly, that will be made up in a decrease line in point 1 eventually. But as you probably know, those lines, point 1 is a separate pot of money, and points 2 through 9 are a different pot of money. So we can't move money around between those two as readily as we might like to. But just wanted to let you know that some of those numbers will probably trend a little differently than what was budgeted initially. So anyway, to wrap it up, we're in good shape. Things look as we would expect to look largely at this point in the fiscal year. Happy to answer any questions anybody's got.
Any questions? If not, we'll take a motion to approve the August year-to-date financials as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Thank you. Lisa,
Aye.
Alberta,
Aye.
Chad,
Aye.
Ruth Ann,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Kelsey,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
And the year-end final for the fiscal year 2021.
Yeah, thanks, Alberta. And what a year it was. $15 million, which, gosh, if we could hang on to that every year, what a glorious road we would be in. But anyway, so big numbers. Two things I would point out to you just to take note of. You will see under expenses in point one, I missed the target there slightly. There's always, sometimes I get a surprise as to when payroll lands, and I missed a projection on that. So we're a little over there. So luckily we made it up in some other areas, moved some other money around budget wise. And so we came out largely where we had hoped. So some deficit, and how deficit works in our world is it comes out of our reserve. And as a reminder, we had a 15% holdback, and my guess is because state budget didn't come for us, that they recognized that was a pretty modest overreach in a 15% holdback situation. And so essentially we don't have to pull that from other funds. That doesn't start us in a deficit situation in this fiscal year. It just that deficit 22,000 just comes out of the 15% reserve that we had held back in the FY21 fiscal year. So I think that is all I wanted to bring your attention to related to FY21, except to just to give a shout out to staff who moved a lot of grant money out in FY21, thanks to the governor allocating that $10 million in CARES funds to help with the Arts and Cultural Destination Marketing Organization grant program. So huge for the field, and just a great testament to the work of the staff that we made that 15 million out into the field and go smoothly. So anyway, happy to answer any questions about how we wrapped FY21.
Wondering about the office equipment, line 5.
Yeah, great question, Ruth Ann. So as you may or may not remember, we were in the midst of an office renovation when we were wrapping FY20, and so that office equipment is just some additional furniture that we didn't get a chance to add into the FY20 budget because we kind of got paused. But we recognized that once we finished the renovation, there was just some additional furniture that we just needed to have. We couldn't put the microwave on the floor, so we had to make some additional expenditures there, and that's where in state budget land where those kind of expenditures land. So yeah, but great question. And we did actually, I believe, also in FY21 purchase some additional AV equipment, and you're gonna see that in FY22 as well, because we are needing to adapt our new conference room to the more virtual environment than we had anticipated when we first launched into the renovation of the office. But yeah, great question. That's where that is.
Thanks, Maya.
Sure.
I just want to point out, if you look at the very bottom of the year end, that there's about $100,000 there in some private funds that we still have available to us, although I think some of the Hoffman is slated for the current year. And as we get to the Cultural Trust, there's a couple $100,000 in the interest line of that. So, there's about $300,000 of a cushion for the commission that is there, which is obviously not a lot with a typical budget of $5 million or more. That's only a few percent. So it's not a lot of cushion, but it is something that will allow a new director to manage within. So that is the extent to which you have some flexibility should things arise. So anyhow, any questions with that? Maya, we are, I know that we had told folks last time that the treasurer's office had inadvertently, or actually state budget agency had inadvertently drawn the wrong amount out of the trust, and that is in the process of being reestablished in the trust.
Yeah, actually, I'll talk about that when we do the trust report.
Okay,
So,
that's
yeah,
good.
yeah, that'll be in a later episode. So hang on, everybody.
Well, thank you, Maya and Louis. Great stewardship, to have that nice $300,000 cushion. And just a nice shout out to the IAC staff who did an incredible job in the pandemic and getting a lot of money out to the arts organizations and artists in a very short period of time, and guiding them with the many webinars that were done. So it was a lot of work, and you guys did a fantastic job. So thank you for that. Are there any other questions before we move on to the office of the governor? Okay, Louis, do you want to talk about appointments?
Yeah, so appointments are still pending. Again, we've made the request for the folks listed there in your agenda, Lori and Dave, Anna, and Walter to be given a second term. And then Alan is our vacancy. It's not a vacancy yet because he's still serving until he's replaced. But those are the appointments that are pending. We have checked multiple times and we are assured that they are in process. So I do not have a time frame for that, unfortunately. My experience with various governor's offices is that is a process that takes a lot of time because they have about 3,000 appointees across all these various public boards in the state, and to be on top of all of those identified people, vet them all, et cetera, just takes time. So so I'm sure we're on a list and hopefully moving towards the top of it, but we are yet to be at the top of it. So just hold tight. So.
Okay, well, thank you, Lois. With regard to the executive and transition and search, as you know, we had the executive committee and the commission voted on candidates to forward to the governor's office. That was done, I believe, July 31st, which is what our target date was. And to date, we have not heard anything back from the governor's office. I think all of you know that Rebecca Howard was our liaison with the governor's office, and Rebecca was promoted to, I believe, commissioner of the IDOA. So that was an excellent promotion for her. And so we kind of have an interim liaison right now, Jane Jankowski. And so Jane is kind of starting, she really wasn't familiar with our search. And so she's, I believe, been brought up to date. So hopefully we hope to hear something from the governor's office soon. The plan was to actually make introductions today for the new executive director, but that unfortunately is not happening. So, but hopefully we'll have something soon. So that's my update on the transition search, unless anyone else has anything else to add.
I guess the only thing to add, Alberta, is that we do know that the governor's office has started conducting their interviews. So so that's good that that's progress forward in that they are in the process and actively in the process of doing that work. So
stay tuned. We will let you know once we know. So Louis, do you have a personnel update?
Yeah, our update, of course, is that Anna Tregresser has left employment with a commission. I think Anna was with us for Page 5 years. She was actually started as a governor's intern, summer intern, and then was hired into that program position. So she's done, as you know, great work for us, and we wish her really well in her future endeavors. And also, Ben Thomas is on here somewhere. I think that's the big B down there in my view of everyone. Ben is a graduating senior at Indiana State University, and he is an intern that we have never met in person, right, Ben? We've only ever, all of us have only worked with Ben virtually, but he's been a great asset to the commission as well. Worked a lot with Deanna and program staff, so data and grant type of activity things. So Ben, thanks so much and good luck. And Ben is an orchestral person and is looking for a future in management in that realm. So we wish him the best, and we wish we could keep him for a little longer, but everything changes. So anyhow.
It does. Everything does change. Ben, did you have something to say? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I just said thank you, Lewis.
Well, we thank you for everything you've done. I know you're a great help to the staff, so thank you. Okay, public meeting policy adoption.
That is a handout that should be in your materials. I don't think we put it in the PowerPoint because it's a little lengthy. But as you know, or may not know, the legislature actually passed new open door law that included some more clarifications for virtual meetings. Obviously, that was instigated in some way by the COVID situation. Although currently, obviously, we're still under the emergency order and the public meeting executive order that accompanied that. But this will be the new normal going forward once the public emergency executive order expires officially, if it's not extended again. So the salient points that I think you all should know about is that we need a quorum of 50% of at least 50% of the commission in person to conduct business. So we will need 8 people in person for a quarterly business meeting in order to take official action. Voting can occur at a distance with the people that are not present personally, and the same type of parameters that Stephanie has been following as far as roll call, et cetera, apply to that. Plus, technology-wise, commissioners at a distance have to be viewed and heard like anyone in person. So and whether that viewing or hearing is in person or online in some way, that has to be an equivalent type of situation. So we're beginning to try to figure out with our colleagues in state government what kind of technology will be available to us to help that occur. Obviously, when it's all virtual like this, everyone is equivalent on the screen, and that's great. But when you have people in person and people online, that breaks down a little bit. So that has to be dealt with. Also, there is a piece of this that requires that a commissioner could not miss more than 2 consecutive meetings in person. So that is a new piece of it, a new wrinkle to it. But the enforcement of that comes from the governor's office, and I don't anticipate that they will have a great appetite to enforce 3,000 people across the spectrum of all these agencies. By the way, this law also applies to town councils, county councils, every public body in the state, just not things that are under the executive branch. So, and the other thing that you cannot, as I said, you can vote if you are not in person, with the exception of a number of things. And those are all kind of financial or high level things. So, so the annual budget, reduction in personnel, increasing or establishing a fee or a ticket price, a penalty, establishment or raising or renewing of a tax. So, you know, our annual meeting where we set our budget will be really encouraged to be in-person attendance, or you won't be able to vote on the annual budget. That's probably the most salient thing that we do. We do set ticket prices, registration fees, etc. from time to time. That would fall into that category as well. So just to be cognizant of those expectations might be, you know, slightly different than you understood when you signed up for being a commissioner, but they are the ones that now are, you know, codified and were passed as part of the legislation. So each agency is expected to adopt policy in accordance with the overall public policy that was passed by the legislature. So that is what we are up to today. And you can do it all virtually today because of the emergency order.
Thank you, Louis. Well, I think,
any questions?
hopefully
right.
everybody's had an opportunity to review it. I know Stephanie had sent that out earlier. So some changes, definitely with regard to not being able to participate virtually in more than 2 consecutive meetings. So
hey, Alberta, I thought I want one big point that I forgot to mention is that we are not applying this to committee meetings. So we can still do virtual business in a committee meeting because those actions are only recommendations to the commission for official action. So just like our review panels, et cetera, they're all recommendations. So we currently are not including committee meetings as being interpreted to be part of this new law, and which is a little different because we used to consider our committee meetings as part of the kind of the umbrella of the old law, but there was always a lot of question about whether we needed to do that or not. And given that this is a little bit more restrictive with a few more expectations attached, we're going to allow anyone to push back if they think that that is inappropriate, but we do, because we believe that obviously all committee action is non-official action by the commission. It's only recommendations to the full body.
correct. Absolutely. And that's actually nice that it does not apply to the committee meetings, because otherwise it could be challenging to get a quorum. Does anyone have any questions, thoughts, or comments? None? Okay, then we could take a motion to adopt the public meeting policy as presented by Louis.
Dave Heist, so moved.
Jake Oakman, second.
Thank you. Stephanie, if we could do a roll call.
Thank you. Lisa?
Aye.
Alberta?
Aye.
Chad?
Aye.
Ruth Ann?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Jake?
Aye.
Kelsey?
Aye.
Alan?
Aye.
Anne?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next, we have the Programs, Grants, and Services Committee report, beginning with the direct art funding from the National Endowment for the Arts and Arts Midwest. Louis and Paige.
As you know, we have money directly from the NEA, from ARP funds, as well as money that is afforded to us through our relationship with Arts Midwest, which is also NEA ARP money. And we are using it in three different buckets, I think. One is for support of our regular arts organizational support grantees. So those would be grantees that are currently AOS grantees at all levels. And then we opened it up to other arts organizations for operational support who are not current grantees in the AOS designation. And that reached into a number of organizations that we unearthed with ACDMO, as well as smaller organizations or newer organizations in the state, or simply organizations who had arts organizations who had never applied to us for regular AOS grant in this year, as well as probably some previous AOS grantees that are not currently AOS grantees. And then the third bucket is in community level support. And that is in three places: for our cultural districts, for those that have been part of the creative community pathway, and some for the Office of Community and Rural Affairs HELP program, which is designed to help communities do planning to deal with coming out of COVID. And finally, even though it's not listed on your agenda or the slides, we will have a little bit of remaining money, which we intend to distribute to our regional arts partners for their services in helping to mentor and help arts organizations in their area, especially during this time. So Paige, I'll let you go through the specifics of how much and how many and who, and we'll entertain any questions.
Sure. Let's see. How many? 278 arts organizations across the state of Indiana, 12 cultural districts at $3,000 for marketing, $3,000 to all those 278 organizations. The folks that were in the creative community pathway but didn't make it to cultural district designation will be providing $5,000 to support their cultural district development work within their own communities, which we're excited to help further the efforts that they've already been doing such great work. So I'm looking forward to that. And then with regard to the HELP program, or Hoosier Enduring Legacy program, we're looking at providing around $4,000 for the first round of communities because that will be sort of a long-term program. And that will help those folks engage with the broader community members that aren't normally at the table, and to provide their voices and leveraging the arts to do that. So we're excited about providing all these funds to so many across the state.
Awesome. Thank you.
So these funds are distributed in accordance with the latitude that you gave to us for the distribution of emergency ARP and CARES funds in the meeting in Wabash, which allowed us to do this without seeking an additional approval by the commission. However, since we're all here together, voting on it and accepting it would be sort of gravy, but it would be appropriate gravy on this little meal. So that's where we are here in the meeting, I think.
So we're ready for a motion. And the motion would be, Louis?
To simply accept the distribution as presented. Or I think probably the motion would be to simply acknowledge the distribution as noted by the staff in accordance with the latitude that you have given us.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? If not, we'll do roll call.
Thank you. Lisa,
Aye.
Alberta,
Aye.
Chad,
Aye.
Ruthann,
Aye.
Dave,
Aye.
Greg,
Aye.
Lori,
Aye.
Jake,
Aye.
Kelsey,
Aye.
Alan,
Aye.
and Anne. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you, Stephanie. AOS support.
I think we're down to the ARP inquiry, the Alberta. B, 4B.
Thank you, Louis.
That's okay. It's a long agenda. So I just wanted, I know maybe folks who are on committee of the future know this, but I've provided some information to the Office of the Governor about the state of our field financially at this point of the COVID crisis. I drew from information that we have from the IU Public Policy Institute that has been doing some work for us, and there will be a presentation at the end of this meeting with the information that they have gleaned from communities, excuse me, and organizations across the state. But we also used a couple of other sources internally, information from the ACDMO reports that we had from the field, as well as our own AOS grantees, as well as other sources that we have available to us. The great thing about the information is that it all basically agrees. It paints the same picture of the field, and that is a picture where arts organizations are still in a tenuous situation. They're starting a new season, having used their reserves with not a lot of earned income yet into their budgets, having decreased their employment significantly, both organizational employment as well as contract with artists and other kinds of contractors. It appears that the field could really use money to front end load here now their reemergence into a new season and in-person activities. And as you know, that is still a moving target, I think, in our state with the public health situation of how organizations are going to deal with a new surge in COVID-19. And if you've been following the news, places like the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra and Newfields have led with requiring vaccination documentation or negative tests in order to participate in live events that they're responsible for, and many other organizations are following that, which again puts more pressure on earned income, and also reflects, I think, their usual patronage and expectations for safety for the situation at hand. So that all makes the exit out of this financial situation slower, because it will still affect their ability to generate earned income. So I presented that to the governor's office for consideration, and to see where there might be ARP money that has still yet to be designated in a specific fashion. And it might end up being with another agency that we would then need to partner with. But that's out on the table at the moment for their consideration, especially given the fact that they will have a new leader here and maybe some new priorities associated with some emergency funding as well. So, and you'll get to see a little bit more of that picture at the end of the meeting when we have our friends from the IU Public Policy Institute present, which is, again, just one source of information we used, but it is in agreement really with all the sources of information we used to put together the case to the governor's office.
Well, thank you, Louis, for doing that inquiry with the governor's office. Hopefully we will get some positive feedback and be able to continue helping to support the arts organizations out there. So as you said, they're still in need. The need is still there. So any other comments before we move on? Okay, Paige.
Yeah, I think we're on the docket to talk about Indiana Arts Homecoming. So if you guys could throw the slide up for Indiana Arts Homecoming, we'll share some exciting statistics. Team's been doing a great job, really great steering committee, getting the information out there and really pulling what's going to be a fantastic conference together the 13th, 14th, and 15th of October. So it's coming up fast, and shout out to Connie and handling all the incoming registrations and just being a great new team member to helping with this process. So we're well on our way to hitting 300, I'm sure, relatively soon, with 257 current registrants. So 55 counties already represented. And, you know, we have other states who are able to participate as well because it's all online, although we were sad to move our keynote with the Greens online, but I'm sure that they'll be grabbing a lot of attention. So we're excited about that, providing that broader access. So it's really exciting to see so many first-time attendees at 60%, which is pretty stunning. So we'll be interested in learning more about, you know, why is it we're getting so many more new attendees, but I also think it's largely because of the steering committee, a lot of folks that we haven't traditionally had in our sphere coming to the table. And less than half have received grant funds in the past, which is, again, this is really exciting. So that means that we're really broadening our net. And I think it's in part because of the other program work that we have been doing with Onramp and Lifelong Arts that we'll talk about in a little bit. So super excited about Homecoming that will be focusing on arts learning and at every sort of angle of that thinking. Any questions about Homecoming?
Fantastic response.
And again, I also think we're still seeing the effects of the ACDMO grants and new relationships that were unearthed with that. So again, 55 counties is great, which means there are a lot of rural participants too, which is fantastic. And again, the ACDMO unearthed a lot of both urban and rural folks, but I think especially in the rural realm. So anyhow.
Well, thank you, Paige. Onramp.
Yes, so Onramp, as you know, Anna, this is her baby, and so we've been very lucky to have such a great network of folks. We have some pretty great individuals who are now contracted to help provide direct feedback to some of the cohorts. We have two former on-rampers who are providing that service, Sam Love up in Region 1 or the Gary area, Maddie Miller, who's in the Fort Wayne area. She's a former on-ramper. We also have Aileen McGill, and she's going to be hosting Onramp 22, which we have the guidelines on deck to talk about. They're in Noblesville, and she just is incredibly gifted and working as an entrepreneur artist herself and running an organization. And then we have Amy Olsner, who has been a leader for the local team and is a statewide award-winning artist herself, is a musician. So we have a diversity of disciplines that are helping us move this program forward, and with folks with a lot of direct expertise. So all 5 of the local on-ramps have had their workshops. The applicants are in the midst of submitting applications. The draft review deadline was the 7th, and the application for their fellowship is due September 14th. So it has been such an inspiration to watch these creatives across the state. They're collaborating, they're making things happen. A group just met in Indianapolis this last Saturday. They had met up in Munster. I mean, it's just like such a gift to be able to watch them, and they are so excited and grateful. When I was in New Albany, I just said, "Oh, hey everybody, it was great to meet you. I'm taking off," and they like applauded me. It's just nuts. They're so excited. So when you think about your work here at the commission, know that you're making such a strong and meaningful impact. So we've had 121 participants go through this program this past year. We had really deepened and broadened the program because that was the input that we were getting from the field as a need in response to COVID. We met with the Small Business Development Center to continue the partnership, but they do not have funding to be able to move that forward. They had used CARES funding, but they're very open for us to submit an application for other opportunities from other funders so that we could co-create it again together. So it's good that they're still supportive and excited. I'm really thrilled that Pattern Magazine, as a part of our collaboration with the Indiana Small Business Development Center, which is to share the story of the impact of Onramp. And Pattern Magazine is perfect to do that because they showcase creative entrepreneurs in the state of Indiana through an absolutely stellar professional publication that I have in the other room, of course, otherwise I'd put it up here on the screen. But one of the great things about Pattern Magazine is that it's used by the creative economists in the state of Indiana, like chambers of commerce, to help showcase what Indiana has to offer in terms of creativity and innovation in our state. So we'll be sharing those out with you and stakeholders as well. And shout out to Bridget for pulling that together. That was a big effort, I know. And we expect to have that available to everybody so that you can, share it with your friends and go, how cool am I? I've got this Pattern Magazine. We do such great work, so you can show that off. And that's going to be around, I believe, mid-October, but Bridget would have a better idea of that. So, and finally, we have the guidelines. So we are going to be launching Onramp 2022 soon, right after, I think homecoming will be announcing that's available. The 2022, like I said, will be in person in Noblesville. And that, as always, is going to be in May. And Ailey McGill, like I said, she's going to be there. And so she's looking forward to learning more on how she can provide this type of service in her own local communities. So we are looking for your support today to recommend approval of the guidelines for Onramp 2022.
Thank you, Paige. That was fantastic work. So always great to hear what Onramp is doing. It does such great work for the artists out there, and great job, Bridget and Paige, and for that. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
So we need a motion then to approve the guidelines for Onramp for 2022.
So moved. Oh, sorry.
Lori?
I'll second that, but then I just want to insert one small tiny thing. I happen to notice in the 2022 guidelines that at least the copy I saw, Anna's name is still in it as the contact. Just that you may have already caught that and fixed it, but in case not, just wanted to
Yeah, so we can do recommend approval of the guidelines with minor revisions.
Yes, with
Thank you, Lori.
editorial corrections, yes.
Thanks for that catch, Lori. So we have the motion on the table, and it has been moved and approved with minor revisions. So I think we're ready for a roll call unless there's further discussion.
Great, thank you. Lisa?
Aye.
Alberta?
Aye.
Chad?
Aye.
Ruth Ann?
Aye.
Dave?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Lori?
Aye.
Jake?
Aye.
Kelsey?
Aye.
Alan?
Aye.
Anne?
Aye.
Thank you, motion carries.
Thank you, Stephanie. Lifelong Indiana Arts.
So Lifelong Arts is a program that is funded through the National Association of State Arts Agencies and another agency, something with an A, I don't remember exactly, but really Stephanie Haynes has just done an incredible job securing that funding and putting a pretty stellar program together. How she put it together in part was doing community engagement. We don't just talk about community engagement, we do that community engagement. So she did a webinar to get input from the area councils on the aging. I think I got that name wrong, but it's 3 A's. But anyway, and then also did subsequent 6 webinars to help increase awareness and skill building throughout the entire state, which is, I think, once again, contributes to us getting a broader audience to our homecoming. So we had 57 applications, and we ended up with 25 individuals that were selected. They will also be training in this program at the same time that we have the Indiana Arts Homecoming. They will, like Onramp, take what they learned and put that into practice by taking their arts discipline and working with creative citizens that are the older citizens. So we have representation in that cohort from every region. It's very diverse, which is reflective of our population in Indiana. 76% are over the age of 40, and half, I think, are over 60. So that's really exciting. So we have a nice, rich group of individuals who will really deepen opportunities out for the state and creative aging sector in a way that they're trained to do it well. So thank you so much for Stephanie Haynes for all of her great work putting that program together and selecting an incredible cohort. And shout out to Lauren Curry, who the program provided funding to have some support staff for her. And Lauren has just done a great job providing support to applicants and helping them showcase what they do. So any questions about Lifelong Arts?
And if you recall, the approval of the artist was ceded to the committee that is put this together because again of a timing issue with the quarterly business meeting. So it does not require any action on your part for who's been approved for the program.
Thanks, Louis.
Thank you. Any other comments? No. Then we got an update from the Veterans Program.
Yeah, we've been plodding along with this Veterans Program for a while, and we have made some really good progress. And the Center for Rural Engagement is really inspired to do work in different communities around the state and helping connect with cultural and arts organizations and provide them some skill building in how to identify the need of the veterans in their community and then develop a workshop based upon those needs that leverages a creative arts therapist that's actually on staff at the Eskenazi Art Museum in Bloomington, which I think is maybe unique in the country. I know it's certainly very unusual. So we have been working with them to work with the Indianapolis Creative Arts forces. We call them the Indie Cats. They're the creative arts therapists in our area, which is funded through Creative Forces. And we are meeting with them next week, the folks from Creative Forces, about getting funding support for this program. They do not have guidelines, and it's been a very nebulous approach to getting funding to support it, but we're fully certain that we'll be able to get some support to move it forward, because our goal is based upon those practices around the state, that we will then share out best practices at the Indiana Arts Homecoming 2022. So we're planning well in advance for that, so that other folks can provide arts opportunities to veterans in their communities. This is a very important audience, and their health and well-being is important to us. And so we're striving to deepen that, as well as skill building in the field for more folks to feel comfortable and confident to move forward in providing opportunities locally at home. So any questions about the Veterans Program?
So are we gathering that information across the state, or the veterans in Indianapolis are gathering it to share with us?
The Center for Rural Engagement is going to be gathering that information, and we will be working with them. And then the Indie Cats, the creative arts therapists, are going to be working in concert with them as well. So part of it for them is to recruit veterans into their therapeutic services, because they have a hard time reaching out to rural Indiana. So this is going to be a bridge for them. And then the Center for Rural Engagement is going to provide us with all that information, and we'll just have them share it out at homecoming.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome, Ruthann.
This is less of a question than a comment. Excuse me. I met with Kara Herring yesterday, the governor's chief equity officer, and she has a real interest in art therapy and how it impacts the state, and directly with how it impacts veterans. So she might be somebody to just keep in the conversation as we move forward.
Sure, absolutely. That's good to know. I wasn't even aware of that. She has got a good array of interests.
She does.
If I can also just, this is a little bit of a pat on the back to Greg, but the art therapy degree program in the Heron School was just nationally accredited. And I want to say it's only about 10 years old, maybe 8 years old as a program.
Yeah, it's 8 years.
Yeah. So it's turning out over a dozen qualified art therapists every year. So something to make sure that we tell other organizations that are looking to engage art therapists in a whole variety of age groups and populations. We're producing them here at home.
Thank you, Lori and Greg. I mean, that is extremely important to be aware of and to know, because they're hugely valuable. And the veterans that Stephanie and I have talked to, over the last couple of years, and they are so grateful for the opportunity, and it's extremely impactful and valuable. So happy to amplify anything that we can to help move that effort forward. That's great. Thank you.
And if I can brag just a little more, the art therapist at the Eskenazi Museum is a Heron alum.
Of course she is.
As a matter of fact, and let's not take anything away from IU here for a moment, but we in Indiana actually have 3 art therapy programs. Heron St. Mary of the Woods College, which is quite a large program for such a small institution, and University of Indianapolis. And so we have more programs than most states have. We are producing more therapists than most states produce. As you know, there was a piece of legislation in the last session that was going to try to clear the deck for supporting them through Medicaid and Medicare, et cetera, and it didn't quite make it through. But I'm hoping that we can maybe put a number of pieces together in our state to really move this ahead. So congratulations to Greg and IU, and we're thrilled.
Absolutely. Congratulations, Greg. And as we know, with the mental health situation that is really a nationwide epidemic at this point in time, arts therapy can certainly go a long way. So the more we can grow that, the better off we are. So thank you for all your work in that effort. Certainly appreciated. Any other comments? If not, I think we are a little ahead of schedule, only by about 5 minutes, but yes, let's take a break and we'll be back in about 5 minutes. Thank you. looks like we're back from our break. So I think we can go ahead and get started with the Committee on the Future report. Indiana Arts Trust activity and promotion. Looks like Louis, Maya, and Bridget.
Louis, you want to start?
Sure. We are promoting the Arts Trust by showcasing exemplary work being done with community engagement throughout the state. Bridget has done a wonderful job putting together sort of a plan to systematically highlight, how many do we have? About 60, is it? Projects that we're highlighting over the course of a year. I think that's going great, and hopefully it's fueling a little bit of success with selling a few more plates too to folks out there, which looks like might be happening. You want to comment a little bit about that, Bridget?
Sure. So we have seen the first sales uptick in 7 years. So I'm really excited, cautiously optimistic that this plan is working. So we are in our second year of Arts Trust license plate projects. Like Louis said, every county of the state that has an arts project support grant in it has someone who benefits from the sales of these license plates, which is really exciting. The response from the sector, like I said, has been positive. People are keeping their license plates and encouraging others to buy them, which is awesome. And then we still get support from folks like the Indiana Repertory Theater and some other arts organizations in the state who maybe aren't beneficiaries of the plate, but want to give us ad space complimentary in their programs. And we say, absolutely, let's make it happen. So that's what you're seeing on the screen there on the left. Also, and we'll talk about the Governor's Arts Awards, I think on the next slide, but we will be highlighting an arts project support grant recipient during the Governor's Arts Awards. The Governor's Arts Awards has always served as a means to give folks an opportunity to donate to the Arts Trust beyond just plate sales. And so we'll be doing that again this year. Connie, my colleague Connie, is actually going to head to Anderson tomorrow for the Andersontown powwow, and with our film crew who's working on the Governor's Arts Awards to film some interview, film some B-roll, and really put a face to what these license plate sales are accomplishing. Our plans for the future, we continue to about twice a month interact with our license plate holders, letting them know what's going on and what their donation is helping to support. We also are incorporating telling the story of Arts Trust license plate projects through specialty months or weeks. So next week we have Arts and Education Week coming up. We have a lot of arts projects that support arts education. So we'll be highlighting those as another way to try and showcase the plate and what it can do. Maya, that's all I have for promotion. Does anybody have questions about the promotion of the plate?
So
cool.
Maya can take us
none,
through the
yeah.
numbers. Yeah.
Tell us about the money, Maya.
Yeah, so Louis introduced the cliffhanger early in the story, so I'll follow up with the details. You may or may not remember, but in your FY22 budget, the commission approved drawing a modest amount, $5,000 from the Cultural Trust interest, which is what we use to put toward the appropriations from the Indiana General Assembly to help support arts project support, which some of the Arts Trust projects are, and that's the category we fund them in. So somewhere between our $5,000 request and the actual execution of the withdrawal of the funds from the Treasurer's office, that turned into $50,000. So it inadvertently, the Treasurer's office withdrew $50,000 from the trust interest income as opposed to $5,000. So we are in the process of working with state budget agency to reverse that and put $45,000 back into interest available. And as Louis had pointed out earlier in the financial report, how the commission has some of the Hoffman Trust available, as well as funds that are held at CICF. you have almost $190,000 once this $45,000 is put back into the trust interest to draw on potentially. So anyway, just a little glitch. Somewhere in translation, a zero got added. So anyway, that's getting remedied. Shout out to Stephanie Fendler, who said, this doesn't look right. And we're getting it fixed. But anyway, hopefully by the December quarterly business meeting, we'll have that back in where it needs to be. So happy to answer questions on that, on the money piece of it. But yeah, back to what Bridget said, we're just delighted to see the potential of an uptick that might continue to be. Too early to say it's a trend at the moment, but we're excited that we're seeing an uptick at this moment. So.
Thank you, Maya. Bridget, do you have anything else, son?
Not for the plate, but I think I'm next on deck for other communications focus. So I'm happy to just dive right on in.
Sounds good, Bridget.
Okay, great. So first I want to note just what you see pictured here. I've tried to sprinkle in some photos that our grant recipients have sent to us. So this is actually from the Heartland Artist Gallery, who are an arts organization support grant recipient who also received a merit award this past year. And these are folks that are working in the Marshall County Jail with artists from the gallery. I just thought it was such a compelling story and image. So going back into things that we're doing, right? So we have been communicating with our legislators a lot more frequently than we used to, and it's really just providing them updates. Most recently, we've been in contact and are about halfway through those serving as representatives in the House, letting them know who is representing their district in the Indiana Arts Homecoming, who's presenting, trying to get them more involved. We just sent out a notice to folks that are Arts Recovery Program grant recipients, letting them know, giving them a preview of when that announcement will be made. And we sent that to our legislators as well, so they have a heads up about who in their district is receiving funding. And we've seen a lot of return on that time investment. Legislators are really interested in connecting with their constituents and congratulating them and learning more about these projects. So we're going to continue on that effort. And then we are going to be also leveraging our earned media. Over the past 2 years, we've been tracking that like crazy. And we have a lot of folks that always run our press releases and things like that, which is great. But wouldn't it also be great to pitch them stories about different artists in their communities and what organizations are doing and see where that takes us. So we're going to dip our toes into that whenever we get down the road with the Onramp fellowships and see how that goes. This third thing on the list, media kits for programs and initiatives. Like I just mentioned, we've been really keeping our eye on the ball in terms of letting folks know, letting our grant recipients know, and you as commissioners know in advance whenever we're going to be making a grant announcement. And that has seemed to really help. A lot of our arts organizations and arts project support grant recipients are all volunteer led. And so I've heard from a number of folks that say, hey, thanks, we're such a small team. And having this press release, this baked quote that we can just push is really helpful. So we're going to continue to do that. Connie is having a little trouble with Zoom. So I'm going to jump right in on those commissioner thank you notes and let you guys know what she wanted to say. So let's get to, there we go. So first of all, thank you so much. We saw such a great response. People were sharing photos of your thank you cards on social media and commenting on how cool it was to receive recognition from you as a governor appointed commissioner. So thank you, thank you. We are going to continue to ask you to send thank you notes to folks around the state. So expect something in the mail in the coming weeks with names and addresses of folks that we suggest you reach out to, and then also tune into the Indiana Arts Homecoming. And if there's anybody that you see in a session that you're like, man, they did a knockout job, I'd really like to say thank you and congratulate them and maybe just reach out. We're happy to give you their contact information if we have it. So commissioners, thank you for saying thank you. And take a look in your mailbox for that extra stationery. And if you attend stuff in the field in your own community, say thanks, even if they're not an Arts Commission grant recipient. Let's get them in the loop. Let's bring them in the circle. And lastly, taking a look at our key performance indicators. So during the Committee on the Future, Connie and I always present to you what our numbers are looking like in terms of engagement rate on our emails and on social media. And we've started to cross that barrier into, okay, this is what communications is telling us. And what are our key performance indicators and programs? Program staff do a great job at taking a look at evaluation all the time of programs, but comms is looking to get involved in that process as well. So we're in the early stages of that, but I'm happy to say that's something that is moving forward. I think that's all I have in terms of other communications focuses. Does anyone have any questions for me on communications or suggestions on things that would be more helpful for you as commissioners?
Bridget, this is Lisa. First, congratulations on just some really strategic thinking and pioneering some new ideas. And I applaud you for that. It looks like it's paying dividends. I wonder if when you send us the stationery for the specific things that you'd like us to write thank you notes for, could you send maybe, I don't know, a couple, 3 extra so that if we kind of have an extra supply, maybe you were already planning to do that, but would love to use those.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Well, Bridget, great work. I agree 100%. All of those efforts and that strategic thinking behind those efforts, I think that's going to pay dividends well into the future. So thank you to everyone that's had a hand in that.
Yeah, we've got a great team. Thanks, you guys.
We do. Okay, I think, are you on for the Grantees Merit Award as well?
I am, but just to say that we're going to be utilizing that earned media, leveraging earned media for that to help tell the stories of those folks as well. Nothing huge to add on that.
Okay. And the Governor's Arts Award.
Yeah, I'll jump in, and then Lewis, feel free to come on behind me if I miss something. I'm sure I will. So we have been hard at work with a production company called Tilt 23 and been traveling around the state. Maya, Lewis, and I, we've seen a lot these past couple weeks. This evening, I'm going to Jeffersonville, Indiana to hand out a Governor's Arts Award. And then tomorrow, like I'd mentioned previously, Connie will be headed to Anderson to highlight our Arts Trust folks. And so we've had a great team working with us. The Governor's Arts Awards will be a broadcast on Mandolin, which is a platform developed by Robert Midas from Bloomington. Some of you might know him. And this is really a platform that emerged from the pandemic as a way for performers to continue to engage with their audiences in a meaningful way. The platform is it's really cool. It's something you have to see to understand. And I'm so excited to be able to offer the Governor's Arts Awards on the platform. It is free to stream on Sunday, October 10th. We're not sure about what time yet. So that's something that we would love your input on. If you have strong feelings, commissioners and anybody watching on YouTube, please drop in the chat if you think 7 o'clock or 4 p.m. Those are the 2 times that we're bouncing around here. The good thing about this is it can be available anytime right after the initial stream. So it's not a make it or break it situation, but we want to make sure it's a good fit. Here we have pictured artist Damaris Gaunt. She's an artist out of Nashville, Indiana, who created this year's awards that she's standing next to. They are stained glass pieces. Folks have been super excited to receive those. Lewis, am I missing anything?
I don't think so. I think you're doing a great job, B. So, yeah. So, again, this is the first Governor's Arts Award. We've done broadcasts before and public television, but we've always had a live event accompanying it, right? So it's always been a broadcast of a live event. But this is a broadcast of a non-live situation. So all of the pieces of it are pre-developed. So we'll see how that works. We're excited. A little bit of different delivery method. So anyhow, and one that, as Bridget says, once you've seen it, you can see it again. I mean, it is not just a one-time deal. There's an on-demand portion of it too. So also want to point out that people can make a donation to the event, to the trust, as part of it. So there is no admission fee, right? You don't have to pay to be able to experience it, but there's an opportunity when you get your free ticket to donate. There's also another opportunity during the course of the broadcast to also give. So that's a really lovely piece of it as well.
Yeah, looking at about an hour, no more than an hour run time. So again, if you have suggestions about which time feels right to you, or if you're like, you know what, you guys just make the decision, we're happy to watch, that's great as well. Happy to field any questions about the Governor's Arts Awards.
Will you be sharing that link so that we could participate?
Yeah, that's a great question, Alberta. So we are planning on launching and inviting the public to save their virtual seat sometime next week. We're still working out particulars with Mandolin, the streaming service, once we get this time nailed down, but next week.
Awesome. How many awards recipients are there?
There are 7 this year. So we have Jim Bodenmiller, who's a former commissioner and chair of the commission from Lafayette. We also have John Green, who is keynoting our homecoming, which is fantastic. He's an author here in Indianapolis. Hurley Goodall, who was a representative from Muncie. He passed away earlier this year, and we were able to give the award to his longtime caregiver and nephew, Julius. And that was a really special moment. And I'm excited to see how that segment plays out. Hurley was just a civil rights icon here in Indiana and did a lot for the commission. He was a former commissioner as well. We also have Bob and Barbara Stevens from Columbus, Indiana, who have done a lot with the TC Seal State Historic Site. We have Amy Olsner, who is receiving the Emerging Artist Award. Paige had name dropped her earlier too. She's going to be one of the contractors to help out with Onramp, which is really exciting. She's a musician from Bloomington. We also have Michael Cleveland, who I'm going to go see tonight. Ruth Ann said he gives one stellar performance on the fiddle, so I'm really looking forward to that. He's a Grammy Award-winning artist from Henryville. And lucky number 7, who am I missing? Harrison Center, of course. The Harrison Center for the Arts here in Indianapolis. They are our only organization recipient this year, and they've just done, I mean, they've always been outstanding, right? But even during the pandemic. So I'm very excited to honor those 7 recipients.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Strategic planning update.
Well, it's my pleasure to introduce a couple of colleagues here from the IU Public Policy Institute that have been doing some research for us, and that's Jody Martin and Drew Klasik. Drew, Drew, I'm trying to get you on my screen here. There he is. Drew, I first met Drew. We did a diversity conference up at the University of Notre Dame. What year was that, Drew?
Mayor Pete had just been elected. I can't remember though. That's how long ago.
Yeah, that's how long it was. And at that point, we were thinking that we really wanted to get the feel to understand that the world that they have been operating in is not a static world, and it's changing. And demography was changing in our state, racial composition, age composition, a lot of things were changing in our state, and that we needed to help them understand that. And someone recommended Drew to me, and I don't even know, I can't even remember who it was, but they recommended him by saying that he was very funny and he was a demographer. And I thought, oh my God, how can that possibly be? You know, it's like jumbo shrimp or something, right? Funny demographer, what is that? So I met Drew and he came up and did it. And since that time, he has done numerous presentations in the cultural realm in the state. And we've been able to engage the IU Public Policy Institute in several research things that we've done over time, looking at basically employment and the creative sector in our state. Drew, like we're about retired or very close to that. We will be sipping coffee in Boise, Idaho together when we visit our kids, my kid and his two girls both live in Boise. So we're going to sip coffee out there, I'm sure, at some point in time. But Drew and Jody, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm turning it over to you.
Hey, Louis, that was very nice. I'm going to buy a house, actually. My daughters have convinced me that I need to move there. So eventually you can come to my house and have coffee if you don't want to meet at a coffee shop. But on a more serious topic, we can skip do you want me to say next every time, or how do you want to know when it's time to? Cool. Okay. So originally, just before COVID hit, our goal on this project was to give you all the ability to walk into any county in Indiana, talk to your local elected officials, your legislators, and your economic development professionals in depth about how arts in their world, meaning kind of job creation and wages and industry growth, contributes to the local economy, while also obviously having the ability to say the cool thing about arts is we can identify fast growing high wage jobs, and oftentimes jobs that increase the inclusivity in your county. You get that while also creating a more vibrant quality of life in your local economy, which increases your ability to retain and attract talent, retain that you've developed and attract that from elsewhere. Then came the pandemic, and I just remember kind of a panicked phone call saying, what do we do? What do we do? And the big switch we made, first off, I was like, if you need to use my money to help arts companies, go right ahead. That's a really important deal. But no, they probably now sadly made the decision that we should keep working. And the big switch we made was, let's develop a survey that identifies in, I don't remember exactly how many counties, Paige, but I feel like it was 10 to 20, asks art organizations in those counties how the pandemic's been affecting them and how we might collectively help them, while then still working at a slightly higher level to give you the ability to do what we originally set out to do, which was talk about jobs, high wage, fast growing jobs, the kind of stuff that economic development people really care about. So next slide, please. I'm going to show you a few of the results of this, some of the highlights of the survey, and then turn it over to Jyoti to talk about the data she's been working about. The first thing is Paige must, and the rest of you, but mostly I think Paige must be pretty powerful, because I was surprised at how many people responded to the survey, especially kind of during a time of crisis. We had 126 out of about 150 people or organizations that we hoped to talk to. And then came the kind of, okay, so first, I think the last survey we got would have been in November-ish of 2020. So by that then, when we probably didn't understand that a year later, we'd still be in the pandemic. But if you keep in mind when the survey ended, almost all of the respondents were somewhere between extremely confident and moderately confident that their organizations would survive the pandemic based on what they knew then. If you add in the somewhat confidence, 92% of all the organizations that responded were at least somewhat confident that they'd survive the pandemic. Next, as soon as we get past that, the news starts getting a little bit less exciting for you all. and really unexciting for me, because if you look closely, you'll notice I misspelled financial on the graph, or mistyped, since I proved that I could spell it up higher. About 55% of the respondents said that the financial impact was going to be either extremely or moderately severe. And when you add in somewhat, you get to a little over 80%, which I found really interesting, because they were all very confident that their organizations were going to survive. But almost in the next breath, they were telling us, we are certainly hurting, oftentimes moderately or extremely financially. So the next question and the next slide is, how are organizations responding to what the pandemic's doing to them? In the first case, they're reporting that one of the reasons they're financially concerned is that they're losing sponsorship and other support revenue. Obviously, particularly during the peak of the pandemic, or at least pre-vaccine, we didn't do many public events, and therefore 108 of the organizations out of about 150 reported that they lost ticket sales. And maybe most disconcerting is that about 30% of the organizations reported as of November of last year that they had a dip into their financial reserves to make ends meet. And the next slide shows you how much revenue we lost by size of organization. So on the left-hand side of the graph are kind of the ranges of the annual budget of the organization. And then the bars show how much the average reported loss of revenue was for organizations by size. Your eyes immediately drawn to the fact that the $1 million plus organizations lost on average almost $73,000. And that is by far the largest amount. But the truth is, it's those little organizations of $100,000 or less that averaged a loss of around 10% of their annual operating revenue. So as a share of overall revenue, it was actually the smallest organizations that were hit the hardest. And that would also be troubling, because I'm guessing they had the least amount of financial reserves, and on and on. So that's kind of by organizational side, how organizations were impacted. And then comes kind of the hardest part, I think, for everyone. Well, maybe not, because, they did lose their ability to contribute to the community through events, et cetera, and performances. But almost all organizations inevitably responded to the loss of revenue, both from sponsors and from ticket sales, by laying off or furloughing staff. 101 of the 150 laid off at least one person. Almost the same number reduced salaries. And then it even filtered its way further through the economy, in that they started not hiring or disengaging from consultants and temporary workers. And surprisingly, only 44 kind of created a hiring freeze. And I only say surprisingly because almost everybody was laying off work, and I would have thought a hiring freeze kind of synced with that. So key point there is that as we were getting ready to make a report to show folks how, particularly economic development folks, how vibrant, how much economic vibrancy arts were adding to the community, COVID was actually resulting in a reduction of that economic vibrancy. Certainly arts weren't the only organization hit, but they were hit pretty hard when you look at this data. Then you get to kind of a chart again, organization side. The red bar are the number of laid off employees, and the blue bar are the number of organizations that reported the number. So a lot more on the survey. The more detailed we asked for, the less organizations responded to the survey. So a lot more said, yes, we laid off firms or laid off employees, than told us how many employees they laid off. So for the largest organizations, 8 organizations laid off 66 employees, which I think was an average of a little over 8 per organization. Of the 7 smallest firms, the ones that were most financially hurt, all but each one of this, there were 5 total employees laid off. each organization reported laying off one employee, except for two that reported laying off no employees. We didn't ask, which is my fault, how many employees they each had, because we figured we were going to get that on the other data. But I'd be willing to bet that, again, those large $1 million plus organizations, even though they were laying off about 8 people, were not hit as critically as the less than 100,000 organizations, which I'd be willing to bet had 2, 3, 4 full-time staff at the most. The key change in the kind of survival strategy was the same as virtually every place else, which other than, I guess you can't do DoorDash for art performances. So we went quickly to online events. The first 3 bars show how many people were canceling. And then the last bar shows that amongst all the cancellations, the response was that virtually every organization that canceled came up with some form of live streaming performances. And as a boring demographer human being, anything that was coming online that was even modestly entertaining during the pandemic, particularly during the caged in part of the pandemic, so to speak, was particularly important. We didn't survey the general public to say how important to you were those live streaming performances, but I know personally they meant a lot to me. And then the last slide for me, I think this is right, is how critical was the assistance that the arts organization, local government, and others provided. You can see that again, the vast majority, 86%, thought that assistance was either very critical or moderately critical. Their favorite programs are listed on the right: the payroll protection program, emergency injury disaster loans, and then programs developed by local governments in their communities. And then they were virtually unanimous in their praise for IAC's response to the pandemic. I suspect that Paige was using her influence not just to get them to respond, but to praise her, because the most commonly mentioned Arts Commission person that was wonderful was Paige. And for those of us that know her, we probably find that data to be somewhat questionable, right? And with that, maybe if you want to ask questions about the survey, this might be a good time, and then I can be quiet and let Joe T tell you about the real data, which was the original goal.
Hey, Drew, Dave Heiss, quick question. On the slide talking about the financial impact, how significant in dollars, I was actually surprised it wasn't more. So do you think they're including public assistance dollars, sheltered venue or PPP loans or whatever? Because I would have thought performing arts organizations would have had an even deeper depth.
We asked them for their net loss, so they logically would have included any benefits that were coming in. But also remember, it wasn't yet to the end of the 2020 budget year when they were responding, and some responded. It's not like they were all so wonderful that they all responded in August. And so some responded in August and others responded in November as Paige kept badgering. And so it may be that if the August firms had waited till November, they'd found out that the number was bigger.
Okay, great. Hey, that's very helpful.
I too was surprised. I was surprised constantly, because when the very first question was, how have you been affected? And most of them said, oh, not that much. We think we're going to have no trouble surviving. And then they start giving me the detail. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, how are you going to survive? And then you get the data on revenue and you say, oh, maybe it's not quite as bad as I actually think. But then curiously, you get the employment data, which kind of is maybe more heavier layoff than I would have expected, given the finance.
Mm-hmm. Also, Lewis is right. I can be funny, but
when you're talking about the impact of COVID on something, it's probably better to tone down your high quality sense of humor.
If questions come up, I guess we can put them in the chat box, and I'll continue with the data part. So my name is Jyoti Martin. I've been working with Drew for some time. And Drew, as I go through this, as a seasoned demographer, please feel free to add, as I will miss some information and add your touch. It was funny talking about, the pandemic, that we didn't think we would be here at this point. I used to joke, my son was born, my first one, 3/15/2020. I used to joke, oh, my son's going to start walking by the time this is over. Long and behold, he's actually jumping out of his crib. Almost 18 months old. It's quite impressive, but dangerous. So we're going to look at some data for creative economy. Most today specifically for Indiana, but when you see the full report, we will have comparisons to the US, and talking about the region, more specifically at regions and those 20 counties that we had identified and surveyed folks from. So when we talk about creative economy, there's two ways we look at it. One is creative industries, so jobs and wages in creative industries. There's 66 specific, 66 specific industries, they chosen by the 6-digit NAICS code that make up those creative industries. And employments and wage in those industries include all types of jobs within that industry. So accountants in performing arts and such. Next, and also creative occupations, which there's 46 specific jobs that are that make up creative occupation employment. So those are specific to certain, like graphic designer, but those also include jobs outside of creative industries. So for example, graphic designers at a manufacturing facility or those industries. Hey,
Jyoti, can I just add one thing? At one point, Paige and I and Jyoti had discussed creating a super creative occupation list that would focus on those people that you felt kind of bridge the difference between arts and creative. And so like a landscape architect is a creative occupation, not necessarily the same as a musician. We haven't done that yet, but that remains a possibility that we'd create a subcomponent of this data.
Drew, you might also mention that there are certain jobs that we might consider creative jobs, like Greg Hull being the Dean of Heron being a creative job, but he would be listed under education and not under a creative job. And so these numbers also miss some people who may be coded in other ways, although we would consider them creative people. So
yeah, in fact, Louis, when I think it gets even more complicated when Jyoti and I were talking about this not too long ago, and our mutual friend Mike Huber runs the Greater Indianapolis Chamber, and I'm sure that's how he shows up in the occupation data, but he's also an employed musician with his band. I don't know how, I don't believe the federal data gets the fact that a small portion, I'm sure, of Mike Huber's income comes from performing.
Yeah, there's a lot of caveats for sure that this data doesn't capture greatly. But in talking about total jobs, so we're looking at a change from 2015 to 2019, just before the pandemic, because that's the best data we have available, and we want to see prior to the challenging circumstances the pandemic brings. So there has been a slight decrease in the total jobs that are in creative industry. However, so that's a graph on the left that is showing, and on the right, however, the creative wages have been increasing. So, I mean, there's that good news. But when we look a little bit deeper into, self-employment versus people on a payroll, freelance workers are the backbone of the arts. So there has been, the self-employment has been increasing at a higher rate than the payroll employment actually has declined, but the self-employment increase is higher than the decrease. So it looks like more people are becoming self-employed in creative industries. Moving on, when we look at in payroll, just wages, overall, like I said, wages are increasing, which is the good news, but self-employment wages are slightly lower, but that may be people, their part-time job, they're freelance workers. So the way it's showing up, it's not, it may not be as significant to us, but it might be to them. So, but even though with these numbers, it's increasing, and even payroll employment has increased over time. Moving on. So we're going to look, and remember, we're going to just jobs that are creative jobs, right? There has been an increase in those jobs, like by 14%. So from 2015 to 2019, there's 14% more creative occupations, and regardless of what industry you might be in Indiana. And similar to what we saw with creative industries, self-employment is also increasing, and payroll is actually also increasing. And this payroll employment is also increasing, but self-employment is increasing at a higher rate.
And I recall from the previous study, which is why we're using in 2015, 2016, that Indiana already had a high share of self-employed people working in creative industries. I would, and you're still growing that, but recognize, and when we do the national stuff, you'll see it, that the whole gig economy means that across all sectors, self-employment is growing. Sorry, Jyoti.
No. I told you to jump in as needed.
Yeah, I was just trying to obey.
Thank you. All right, moving on. These are just top 5 creative industry employment. So the highest number of jobs. Overall, I won't go through the specific, but this just kind of like the highest number of employment is independent artists, writers, and performers. And they are increasing, which is good because that does make up the largest employment industry. And in terms of when we talk about this is just creative industry employment, so payroll employment. Unfortunately, commercial printing artists, they make up the highest number of jobs however, they are decreasing, not at a super high, slightly by 7%. So
Could I make one more point, Jyoti? One of the, so this is the first time I'm seeing some of this data, but one of the things that jumps out at me immediately is that probably most of the reason that in the aggregate jobs haven't increased is attributable to wired telecommunications and newspaper publishers, which kind of implies that if we created that super creative set of occupations, that you'd likely see job growth, because you've lost thousands of jobs in just those 2 sectors.
Right. And moving on to self-employed, as the name implies, independent artists, the highest number of self-employment is independent artists, writers, and performers. And it has decreased slightly. And again, we may see it somewhere else in another category. And moving on, just now looking at the largest growth in industry, creative industry. So we're looking at change from 2015 to 2019. So I've just, for this purposes, I've chosen two top increases, top two highest growing, largest growing industry employment. Sorry, a lot of words. So in terms of overall employment, there's other sound recording industries and motion pictures are increasing. And in terms of payroll, same thing. There's recording industries that are increasing in jobs. In self-employment, there's a pretty high increase in motion picture and video distribution. And so this is looking at percentages, and the number, when we look at the numbers, they may not be large number that make up, but at least it shows that they are increasing. So when we look at large decline, so when we look at decline and growth, there's a higher large percentage of increases than there are decreases. So that's the good news. And again, I don't think this would surprise many, book, periodical, and newspaper merchants, because if we're moving on to online, that's showing a decline. Greeting card publishers, again, probably has a lot to do with the greeting cards and such. So this kind of shows, the blue shows the overall decline in the largest decline in creative industry employment, and the orange yellow shows payroll employment, and the red shows self-employment. Okay, moving on. And when we look, this looks at largest growth in creative industry wages. The very top is the overall, the top two I chose for this. There's been an increase in news syndicate wages. Although payroll employment, although we saw that when we look, the greeting card publishers, the jobs are declining, but the wages seem to be increasing. So, which I guess creates a competitive market. So moving on to largest decline, in terms of declining wages, this kind of shows a couple in creative industries that are declining in wages. Okay, now we're going to look at creative occupations. So those jobs that are creative jobs, regardless of the industry you work in. So I just couple the top highest employment. When we talk about all creative occupations, so photographers are the highest, that number of jobs, making up the highest number in this creative occupation employment, and public relations when it comes to payroll, and photographers are also the most likely to be self-employed, and they are increasing. So I guess in this, the good news is these make up the highest number of employments, and they are all increasing. So moving on, largest growth in creative occupation employment overall, museum technicians and such. There's designers when it comes to payroll, and archivists when it comes to self-employment. Okay. When it comes to largest decline, I don't know if this surprises many, but overall broadcast announcers and radio jockeys, maybe moving on to another way of communicating that information. When it comes to payroll agents and business managers, self-employment, the broadcaster announcers. And so this is kind of showing, I know it's a lot of information, But when you guys have the opportunity to see the full report, when it's complete in December, you'll see this broken down further into by region, and also those counties that we talked about. And there'll be additional information. So you'll have it to look back to.
Jody, something that stuck out for me, that there seems to be some significant declines in like art dealers and then agents and that sort of thing. And I'm wondering if, artists are connecting directly with job opportunities, if they're independent or whatever, directly. So they're managing themselves rather than having somebody manage their artistic product. So that, speaks more to, our efforts to try to train people as entrepreneurs, because it looks like some of that middle level or representation level where people were doing their business part for them is disappearing. It's coming down. And I wonder if you see it that way. That's what the data kind of looks like to me.
Right. So possibly they're reflecting in a different job position.
Yeah, Louis,
Yeah.
I think your idea makes sense. And I know, at least for me, on the artists, particularly the performers I follow, they've become so reliant on social media for marketing both their music and their appearances, that I would guess that social media has in part taken the place of booking agents, etc.
Well, thank you guys for the great work that you are doing here on our behalf. Of course, we're looking forward to having the kind of the more comprehensive report on this. And you guys weren't here. I've already used some of this data to try to pitch the state of things to the governor's office to let them know, where the industry is as far as need and impact, especially the first set of data we looked at with those 126 organizational respondents. But this is really great. It helps us. I think it'll help the commission to think about, the impact of the work, who gets impacted by the work, and who particularly maybe needs more attention, right? As far as where the work gets applied, and something about the scope of the industry too, and what we need to do to make an impact, given the scope of the industry as well. So all of those things are really important pieces of this, I think, for the commission to chew on a bit and look at some other data that we have internally, et cetera, and come up with the most complete picture that we can. So.
Hey, and
Louis, can I ask a question real quick? Would it be possible to get that slide deck forwarded to the commissioners so we can kind of look over it, or is that proprietary, not to be shared?
Jody and Drew, do you feel good enough about where it is at the moment as far as the information? Because I know that we're still in the process of sort of trying to finalize a report. Do you think it's clear enough and wouldn't be strangely misleading in ways or whatever? So that would be my only concern, Jake, is because it's really only a piece of it now. But if they feel comfortable with it, I think it's
on my side, I'm good with that, especially if you let me correct my misspelling of financial.
Yeah, I also feel confident. I mean, these numbers probably aren't going to change. What we have, again, the final report will be more comprehensive. So yeah,
if it's better to just wait for the final report, if that's cleaner and better, I'm not in any hurry or anything. I just think it's really fascinating, kind of want to refer back to this if needed.
Maybe the compromise is you use the survey data because that has some immediacy to it. And we share the first half of the slide deck. The second part of the slide deck, the stuff Joe T's working on, the only challenge with that from my perspective is that until we start drilling down, almost anybody's probably going to have more questions than we or you would have answers right now, because you don't have enough depth for that perspective. Is that legit?
That works. Yeah, that works for me.
Okay, then I will. Also, that means that I can extract my part, change the way I spell financial, and I'll email it back to you soon.
Well, thank you, Drew and Jody. That was very helpful and very informative. So thank you for that. We look forward to things to come.
Thanks, and good luck, Lewis. See you in Boise.
Thanks, Drew. See you there.
Okay. Now we have the two ands with their regional partner report.
Yeah, I'll jump in first. So good morning. My name is Ann Fields Monacle. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Tippecanoe Arts Federation, and I'm now officially co-chairs with Ann McKim down in Evansville. Ann, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Ann McKim. I'm the Executive Director of the Arts Council of Southwestern Indiana. And as I said earlier, the Region 10 Arts Partner for the IAC.
Thanks, Ann. So just real quick, I think our report is pretty to the point. The Regional Arts Partners have continued our bi-weekly, sorry for the baby in the background, our bi-weekly virtual meetings, which serve as a check-in with the IAC staff. We're using them as an opportunity, of course, for regional initiative grant updates, and also having conversations about other relevant topics of our role as regional arts partners. So we've been talking about things like capacity building needs of arts organizations and individuals kind of post-pandemic. I know Ann had a couple other examples she wanted to share with you.
Well, no, I think you've covered the big stuff that we've been talking about lately, but yes, just sort of this question of how are we doing things right now? Are there ever changes that we need to be making to the granting process? What kind of information do we find is important to be collecting in grant reports? That type of thing. Making sure that our access to the grantees throughout the state, that the information that we're collecting from them is really getting back to you guys so that you can make decisions with the most information and from the best informed place. The other thing that Ann and I discussed sharing with you all is that we did advise the IAC that a webinar on best practices for projects and programs going forward right now with the COVID numbers would be appreciated. And so Dr. Weaver and the team over there held that for us. I think it was very informative. I know that many organizations, at least in my part of the state, had delayed programs until the fall, hoping that things would be better now. And so, you know, we have all of these big public and outdoor events. We have people's fundraisers. Everybody knows fall is kind of the beginning of the big gala season. So how do we address it? How do we as arts organizations keep our patrons safe and healthy, and remember that that their well-being is more important than perhaps their dollars in some situations, well, in all situations, obviously. We also wanted to share with you that we will be hosting one of the panels at the Homecoming Conference, talking specifically about arts organizations, how what those look like in different communities, how to get them going, how to manage them, how to work with municipal governments. And the idea there is that many of my colleagues who are part of the RAP group and a few others that we're pulling in have this experience that perhaps other communities can replicate, and we can see more of this work really tailored to some of like the small and rural in particular areas that may not otherwise have advocates for local arts in any kind of structured form. That's all I've got. I know we wanted to make this brief because today was more about listening for us and in this new role. I want to remind all of you all, though, that anytime that you are in the southern part of the state, you are more than welcome to come through Evansville, and I'll be available for you. We're down here in the toe, but we are not actually Kentucky. I know that there is a common misconception there. We're still on the side of the river. And really via email, phone, any way that you want to reach out to Anne or to myself for more direct access to what we're doing, what we're hearing from the folks that we are helping you all serve, we're available. Anne, back to you.
I think you covered it perfectly. Thank you all. It was great meeting you today.
Well, thank you, and we certainly appreciate all you do to support the arts. So thank you very much for that. Well, I don't have any old business. I don't know if anybody else does or not. But with regard to the new business, I definitely want to give a shout out to Lewis. I think unfortunately, this is his last quarterly business meeting before he retires on October 15th. I'd just like to acknowledge and thank him for the tremendous work that he has done over the past 15 years. And I think he was saying earlier, this is his 61st quarterly business meeting. So Lewis, do you have any thoughts, or any other commissioners? Feel free.
Well, I'm hoping that I still have an opportunity to see some of you in person here before I leave this role officially. So I will save any comments to that, except to say it's been the most fun I've had and the most rewarding thing I've done, I think. So, and I'll save my comments for when I see you guys, but it's been a special piece of my life with a lot of special people involved in it. So thanks.
Any commissioners?
I just want to say it's been such an honor to learn and work with you, and to have you as a leader in our state over this whole time has been remarkable. And through the pandemic, particularly, thank you for everything you've done to help us all keep moving forward.
Yeah, I'll want to say more too later on, but very grateful for all you've done for the state, all you've done for us, and just for being such a great colleague. It's been wonderful working with you.
Well, I know I've certainly learned a lot about the arts with Lewis and his leadership. And thank you, Lewis, for all that you've done for the arts and what you've done to promote the arts throughout the state, to bring the mission of the Indiana Arts Commission to everyone. So thank you for that. I love that picture of you.
The one where I'm young, probably. But anyhow, and again, I'll save this for more of an in-person thing. But I do want to say that, I left the state for about a decade, a little bit more, about 12 years, and then came back. And the reason I came back was because of the people. In my mind, the people that really cared about the place that they lived in and wanted to do something about it. I lived in a number of states, and even though I love
I think we've lost Lewis.
It's choked up.
of all those states too.
Oh my God.
There he is.
What are she laughing at there?
You froze.
We couldn't
You
hear
froze,
you.
yeah, yeah.
And Alan said you were choked up.
I was choked up. That was it. I don't know what. Don't worry, I'm gonna do this again sometime when I see you guys live, so no worries, so. And I promise I won't freeze then.
Well, thank you, Louis. Round of applause. Thank you so much. Okay, I think it is time to adjourn. So I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, we stand adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alberta.
Thank you.
Thank you, Albert.
Bye-bye.
Bye.